So apparently gap years are controversial. I'm gonna give you my top 3 reasons today why taking a gap year was the best thing that I could have done before applying to dental school. If you're new here, my name is Medina. I'm a second-year dental student at Columbia, and if you're not subscribed, please subscribe because I have lots of content like this coming. I also do vlogs of my daily life in dental school if you're curious about that, and also admissions advice. Okay, so reason number 1 why I think it's a great idea to take a gap year, it is incredibly stressful given the nature of the application cycle to apply straight through without any kind of break. Because the application process takes a year, and this is true for dental school and med school and many other pre-professional schools, because of the length of the application cycle where it opens in the summer, you interview usually in the fall, and you get accepted in the winter. It takes about a year in order to get accepted, which means that if you don't want to take a gap year, you have to be doing all of this while you're in the midst of your junior and senior years of college. Now, for some people, that might be totally doable. For me, it would have been incredibly stressful to squeeze all of that in while I was also taking all of my important science prerequisites like organic chemistry 2, physics 1 and 2, biochemistry, classes where it's very important to do your best. It makes it that much more stressful to have to do that while also thinking about studying for the DAT, getting your recommendation letters in order, what you're gonna write for your personal statement. All those things take so much time and are also incredibly stressful. Personally, I'm a firm believer in that you should do your best at one particular thing and stick to that. My undergrad was very intense in terms of the science courses. They were made to be weed out courses, and because they were huge classes, they really didn't make it easy for you to do well. If I had been worrying about also applying to dental school while I was taking those science prerequisites, I can almost guarantee that I would not have done as well as I did. And I'm not saying that I got a 4.0. I really didn't. You could watch my stats that got me into dental school video where I talk about the exact numbers and my GPA. I didn't have a perfect GPA, but I also didn't have a bad GPA. I got A minuses, B pluses a lot of the time, and I guarantee that if I had also been worrying about all of the things that I mentioned before, I would not have had the time to dedicate as much time to studying. The other thing you want to consider is that certain schools don't even want to see your application until you've completed all of the science prerequisites. So unless you've taken physics 1 and 2 in schools that I applied to in New York, Stony Brook did not want to see our applications from students who had not yet completed all their prerequisites because they wanted to make sure that you had the academic ability to meet their standards, which were notably very high because it's a very competitive school because it's relatively inexpensive compared to other schools. But what I'm saying is you really want to look into the requirements of the particular school that you really want to go to, because some schools will literally just toss your application if you haven't completed all of the required prerequisites, including the math courses, the physics courses, whatever it may be. The other thing you want to think about is you also don't want to be stressing about flying out to interviews or having Zoom interviews when you have midterms and finals to study for. If I had been applying while I was still in school, my interviews would have been right in the middle of midterm week that I normally had at my school, which was early to mid-October. If you think about it, you would have had to worry about scheduling flights, scheduling interviews during a time when you're already dealing with exams. Obviously, when you think about the long haul, you would probably prioritize doing your best to show up to the interview and taking the earliest available date. But what happens if that conflicts with an exam or a quiz or a paper that you have due for a class that you probably should still be doing well in because you still have to update your transcripts when you apply to dental school while you're still taking classes? Now, don't get me wrong. I initially was incredibly intimidated by the time factor. I knew that I was going to be spending 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of dental school, plus however many years of residency I decided to do, whether I decided to specialize or even a GPR because I want to practice in New York. I knew that I was in for at least 9 years of education and training. To add another year on top of that does sound a little bit scary. However, I attempted to start studying for my DAT in the middle of my spring semester of my junior year. What I realized very quickly was that I didn't have time in the very intense academic course load to also fit in the appropriate amount of time to do my best on the DAT. I'm not going to say that I am a DAT superstar. Again, you can watch my video on what I got on the DAT and see exactly what I got and my score breakdown. However, I think that I did very well. You know, I scored in the 96th to 98th percentile, depending on what scale you look at. And I specifically think that it was because what I did was I planned ahead. I knew that I was going to be studying and taking my DAT in the fall semester of my senior year, which meant that the semester before that, in the spring, I sat down and I planned out that semester. I knew that I didn't want to have a very heavy science course load because those classes take up a lot of time with labs, with lab reports, things like that, studying for exams. I knew I didn't want to do that. So I kind of gave myself a light semester and I gave myself enough time to study because I was trying to take it before the summer of my junior year in order to apply to dental school in the summer between my junior and senior year. And I just realized that I didn't have the time for it. And I didn't want to stress about what had to be put on the back burner. At that time, you know, I was putting myself under pressure that I didn't have to be. And I did have to come to that decision of, yes, I do want to take a gap year. It was just more fair to myself to give myself enough time to do my best. And I'm gonna keep saying this over and over again. It's not about what you do, it's how you set yourself up in addition to that, because I could have done everything in one semester realistically. How well I would have done? Debatable. And this is just a side note. Deciding to take a gap year when I did was a very good decision, just purely based on luck, because my senior year of college was 2020. If I had decided to apply and go to dental school without a gap year, I would have started dental school in 2020, which would have meant that I would have spent most of the year not even being able to touch an instrument, not going into clinic, not being able to start practicing those hand skills early on, because that was the COVID year and everything had to be completely different. I'm not going to say that the education that people who started in 2020 got is in any way inferior. Of course, the schools did their best. They did classes online. They tried whatever they could to help the students. But I do think that I put myself in a better position, because I mean, I had no idea this was gonna happen, obviously, when I decided to take a gap year, because I made that decision in 2019. But I think it just worked out my way that I didn't end up starting dental school in 2020. It was just a stroke of luck. So all of that is just a very long-winded way of saying you want to give yourself time to do your best on every part of the application process. And that means make sure that you're maintaining a high GPA, including a high science GPA in your prerequisites, so that you do well on your DAT, and that you give yourself enough time to write your personal statements, your supplementals, and gather really good recommendations. Alrighty, so reason number 2, you want to make sure that when you are committing 4+ years of your life, plus $500,000 or more, as it is in my case, and as it is in the case of many students applying to dental school and medical school and whatever it is, before you commit to that, you want to make sure that you truly know what you're getting yourself into. And this is a piece of advice that I am so glad I listened to, and that I think that everyone should listen to before they apply specifically to dental school. You can't truly know if you love it unless you've been in it, you've gotten your hands dirty, and that means working as an assistant. I think that it's extremely important for anyone who wants to go into dentistry to try shadowing, yes, but also trying to work as a dental assistant. I know that different states have different regulations in terms of who can work as a dental assistant. Some states require that you take a course, get X-ray certified, etc. I was in a fortunate position where I was trained on the job and I was allowed to do a lot of things that certain states require a license to do. However, single-handedly, this was one of the biggest learning experiences that I've had prior to starting dental school. It has taught me so many skills that I applied every single day of my life while I'm in school. As an assistant, I learned, most importantly, how to take a proper set of x-rays, take an alginate impression, do a cast, make a retainer. I learned teeth numbers, preparation styles, meaning what's a class 2 versus a class 1. I learned the shape of the teeth, the numbers of the teeth. Everything that you learn within the first couple of years of dental school, I had learned very quickly on the job while working as an assistant. Now, am I saying that you cannot be a good dentist or you can't be successful in dental school if you don't work as a dental assistant? Absolutely not. But what I'm saying is that your life will be exponentially easier in dental school if you had worked as an assistant. And that's not limited to just working in general dentistry. Regardless of whatever specialty you have the ability or the opportunity to work in as an assistant. I have classmates who worked in oral surgery and orthodontics. I actually was fortunate enough to work with a general dentist, with a pediatric dentist, with an orthodontist. It kind of not only gave me a good idea of what day-to-day life looks like for general dentists and specialists, it also gave me a good idea of what I wanted or didn't want as a possible specialty. Those experiences were incredibly valuable in helping me kind of narrow down what I wanted to do. Those can only happen when you're in the moment and you're working in that field. When you're shadowing, depending on the doctor, you're not getting to do as much as you may want to do. A lot of times you're not even close enough to see what's going on inside the mouth. I noticed that because I used to shadow while I was an undergrad, before I was in my gap year and before I started working as an assistant. The amount of things that you get to see as a student who shadows versus an actual assistant who is sitting chairside, who's suctioning, who's handing instruments is completely different. Obviously, you have to have a certain level of skills and knowledge when you're doing that because you need to know the steps of the procedure. I tell this story all the time to everyone who asks about my experience as an assistant. But one of the doctors that I worked with on my second week on the job, he was like, I'm gonna hold out my hand and I'm gonna need you to know exactly what I need without me telling you to. And although at first my jaw was on the floor and I was like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna be able to do that, surely enough, a month in, I was able to anticipate the next move because I knew the steps of the procedure. The steps of a composite restoration dentition is something that you learn in your first year of dental school. And for me, I didn't have to learn it because I already knew it by heart. Once you drill out the cavity, you etch, bond, cure with the curing light, and then you place the composite. So those steps are literally etched in my brain because I spent so many hours working and doing this as a dental assistant. I know that opportunities may be limited depending on the area that you live in, but I think that if you have the opportunity and if you have a dental office anywhere near you, it is absolutely an invaluable skill and an invaluable experience to have before starting dental school. And my third and final reason for why I think you should take a gap year, you can use that year to finally relax, to travel. Honestly, when I initially decided on a gap year, that's what I was gonna do. I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna have an entire year. Yeah, I'll work, but I can probably go travel for 2-3 weeks at a time somewhere. Obviously that didn't happen because of COVID. You are about to start a very rigorous program at a very rigorous school, wherever that is, because dental school is intense wherever you go. School breaks are few and far between. And guess what? During those breaks, travel is extremely expensive and you're also very limited in obviously funds because you're living off of student loans most of the time. Although travel is very possible, and as you can see by my travel with me vlogs, I do have time to travel sometimes and that I make a point to do it whenever we have the opportunity. You are a lot more limited in what you can do and where you can go. Having a year to take some time to work, to save up some money, but also to travel and to have experiences that you're just not going to have the opportunity to do so in dental school is incredibly valuable because it adds to not just your academic experience, because you've done enough of that. You did a lot of work in your undergrad years, I'm sure. After you've gone through your prerequisites, you've taken the DAT, you've submitted all of your applications, it's important to take the time to reset and give yourself a break. After an intense 4 years, before jumping into another incredibly intense 4 years, you want to give yourself time to take a break, to rest. I had to be forced sometimes to take a break because all I could think about was compulsively checking my email during my gap year for my application results. But I was working a full-time job. It was also the pandemic, so those things kind of distracted me from that. However, it's a hell of a lot easier to stay away from your email when you're on a beach somewhere or traveling a foreign country than when you're just sitting at home and, you know, compulsively checking it every 5 seconds. Being able to travel, if that's a priority for you, is an amazing thing. And you get so much life experience. You get exposed to different cultures, different foods, and it's also something that you can talk about during your dental school interviews. During my interviews, most of the questions had nothing to do with my academics or dentistry. I was asked about my favorite books, my culture, about my recent trips that I had been on because I had mentioned something about that in my supplementals. It's important to be a well-rounded person outside of just the numbers and outside of the academics. You have the opportunity, you have the time during your gap year, you are more liberated to take the opportunities and do the things that you wouldn't normally do. This is the one time where you have complete freedom. You're not constricted by, oh, I have this exam coming up or I have an essay due. This is the 1 year where you're truly free. Well, let's not say a year. Let's say after August, once you've successfully submitted all your applications, this is the one time where you're truly free to do whatever you want to do. I think it's incredibly important to give yourself time to reset. For me, undergrad was incredibly challenging. My mental health, my physical health struggled immensely when I was studying for the DAT, and I know that that's the case for a lot of people. So give yourself the time to reset. Take a break. It's okay. Coming from a dental student who's in their second year, obviously prioritizes travel and taking breaks when you can. If you can take a year to do that and give time for yourself, then why not? Obviously, this is not one size fits all advice. I know some people who finished undergrad early, got into dental school without taking a gap year. We had classmates who hadn't even turned 21 during their first year of dental school, which I thought was incredibly amazing because they were able to get everything done so fast. And if that's your path, that is completely fair. I found a lot of rewarding experiences during my gap year, and there are things that have not only enriched my life, but they've also made my life in dental school a lot easier. If you want to, or you're on the fence about whether or not you should take a gap year and you're incredibly stressed out about applications, be kind to yourself and give yourself the time to do your best. Like I said, is it possible to do it all your junior year of college while taking prerequisites, while doing a bunch of these other things? Absolutely. But would I have done as well? Who knows? Probably not. I'll finish this off by saying thanks for watching. Again, I'm not saying that this advice applies to everyone, but that was just the path that I took and why I think it's important to consider a gap year if you were thinking about it. And if you're interested in life in dental school admission advice, I would love if you could like this video and hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of my future uploads. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.